So today, we're really embarking on quite an expedition into the creative world of five Starcle men.
Yeah, it's quite a collection of material we've gathered.
It really is. We've got lyrics, the story of Little Dementia Boy, those bits from the Scooter pamphlet, the manifestos.
And just all these other textual fragments and oddities from the FSM database. It's eclectic, to say the least.
Definitely. Think of it as a kind of literary archaeological dig.
Good way to put it. You've got those really repetitive lyrics, almost like Chance, Oscar Jenkins, so far backy.
Pizza Hut family.
Yeah, right. And then these lines that just seem, well, totally out there. Ladder-shaped Bargus and Maylene.
Exactly. And then there are these narrative bits, interview snippets. It's a real mix.
For sure.
So our mission today isn't really about trying to, nail down one single meaning for all this.
No, that would be difficult.
Yeah.
Maybe impossible.
Right. Instead, we're going to try putting on different pairs of glasses, so to speak. We'll explore this material using various schools of literary criticism.
Seeing what angles open up, what interpretations emerge when we apply these different frameworks.
Precisely. It's about the process, seeing what insights we can unlock.
I think it's a great way to approach something this unique. Five Starcle Men stuff.
Yeah.
It lends itself to this kind of multi-angled view. We might find patterns, maybe unintended ones.
Yeah. Okay, so where should we start? How about formalism? Or, new criticism, as it's sometimes called.
Good starting point. This one's all about the text itself, just the words on the page.
Right. Forget the author's life, forget the historical context. For now, just what's there.
And when you do that with the FSM material, certain things really start to jump out. Recurring ideas, motifs.
Like fighting, that seems to come up a lot.
Definitely. In the lyrics, the whole fight placement idea, Glenn's letters, it's a persistent theme. What does that repetition do in the text?
Good question. And what about madness? I've gone insane. It's pretty direct, but there's this feeling of instability running through a lot of it, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. It's woven in. Is it a central textual theme? Formalism would make us ask that.
And power, too. Glenn talking about wanting power, the fight placement hierarchy.
Mm-hmm. What kind of power dynamics are presented within the work itself?
Also, transformations. Like Janet Jackson becoming a Starcle vampire in that animation.
It's a very visual one, yeah. But are there other textual hints of things morphing or changing state?
Formalism also makes us look hard at the language itself. The repetition you mentioned earlier, in songs like Oscar Jenkins or So Far Backy.
Yeah, what effect does that create? Just purely on a textual level. Is it hypnotic? Does it hammer home an idea?
It almost feels like it builds its own weird logic through sheer repetition.
And what about those words that seem totally random? Like in Laughingstock, formalism says, okay, don't worry yet about what they mean outside the text. How do they sound? What's the rhythm? How do they contribute to the overall texture?
It forces you to engage with the surface, doesn't it?
Exactly. Even with the clearer narratives, like the kid asking for money or the Dementia Boy story, formalism focuses on plot structure, character details as written, the setting described in the text.
Okay, let's switch glasses. Psychoanalytic criticism. This is where we start thinking about the unconscious, right? Hidden desires, anxieties.
Putting the text on the couch, basically. Yeah. What underlying drives or fears might be bubbling up here?
Those themes of violence and self-destruction. That line, I like to lose and feel real stupid. Psychoanalytically, you could read that as, well, a lot of things. Inner conflict. Maybe even a death drive.
It's potent stuff. And that other line, I am the girl who I raped. So disturbing. It really pushes you to think about identity, fragmentation, maybe trauma from this perspective.
Yeah, what's the underlying psychic landscape that produces a line like that?
And the whole fight placement concept again, is that maybe a symbolic way of dealing with internal aggression, a need for control battling inner chaos.
Could be. What about the demon guy that shows up? Especially linked to drug use in the text.
Oh, yeah. A classic candidate for interpretation, right? Is it a projection, the shadow self, repressed fears manifesting? Psychoanalysis loves symbols like that.
Okay, shifting gears again. Marxist criticism. Now we're looking through the lens of class, economics, power structures in society.
Right, and you might think, how does that apply to Five Starcle Men? But you actually find these little hints.
Like the kid asking for money on the street, that immediately brings in social reality, inequality.
Exactly. Or the idea of aliens paying for the book of transmissions. It's bizarre, but it's still about economic exchange, value. What does that say?
Even a simple line like, so I own this house where I sit. From a Marxist view, that's about property, ownership, The haves and have-nots.
It prompts the question, yeah. And Glenn's letter mentioning slaves. Nobody wants to go to jail, not even slaves. Even used casually, it invokes these huge historical structures of oppression, doesn't comment on them. Maybe not directly, but the language is there.
And that anecdote about the moms hitting their kids over TV. A Marxist reading might look at the power dynamics within the family unit itself, maybe as a reflection of larger societal power.
It's about looking for those echoes of class and power, even in unexpected places.
Okay, next up, reader response theory. This one's interesting because it shifts the focus to us, right? To the listener, the reader.
Precisely. It says meaning isn't just in the text, it's created in the interaction between the text and you, the person experiencing it.
And with 5 Starcle men. Wow. The interpretations must be all over the place. The lyrics are so ambiguous sometimes, the story's so strange.
Your personal reaction is key. What jumps out at you? What emotions does it stir up? Does it disturb you, intrigue you, make you laugh? Someone else might feel completely differently.
You think about the themes, madness, violence, the just plain weirdness. How does that land with you? And what does your reaction tell you about your own framework?
And the style itself. That fragmented, unconventional approach, does it frustrate you? Does it feel like a puzzle you want to solve? Or does it maybe invite you to just let it wash over you? Reader response cares about your experience.
Okay, let's try structuralism. This is about looking for, underlying patterns, right? The hidden grammar of their universe.
Kind of, yeah. It's looking for the systems, those recurring concepts, Starcle Manie, Krivos block, fight placement, death trap, anti-death. A structuralist asks, how do these terms function together? Do they form a coherent, if strange, system?
Are there rules to how they interact?
Potentially, and structuralism loves binary oppositions, pairs of opposites, life-death, insanity, powerlessness. Does meaning emerge from these contrasts in their work?
You see those pairs quite clearly sometimes.
Yeah, and recurring figures too. Starcle Glenn, Rocket Boy. Even if Luke says some stuff is unsanctioned, a structuralist might still analyze their role within the overall structure they perceive. Do they have consistent functions?
But then, post-structuralism comes along and kind of messes with that, doesn't it?
It does. If structuralism looks for stable systems, post-structuralism says, hold on, are those systems really stable? Is meaning ever fixed?
It leans into the ambiguity.
Totally. Especially with work like this, which is so fragmented and sometimes seems contradictory. Post-structuralism highlights that slipperiness, the multiple possible readings. It questions the idea of a single stable meaning.
The whole concept of unsanctioned art by Glenn or polysorbate fits right in here, doesn't it?
Perfectly. It complicates the idea of a single author, a single canon. If others are adding bits that aren't approved, what does that do to any supposed underlying structure? It destabilizes it.
And those temporal mess-ups with the tablets, where the text itself seems to change.
Yeah, a post-structuralist might see that as reflecting the very nature of language and meaning fluid, unstable, always shifting. The text itself isn't a fixed monument.
Okay, different angle again. New historicism. This brings the context back in, right? The time, the place, the culture.
Exactly. We start connecting the work to the world it came from. The Lancaster era, the Austin era, what was going on then. Specific events mentioned, like the OJ trial reference.
Or even just broader cultural things, like drug experimentation in certain scenes. How might the specific historical moment have shaped what they created?
And the band members' own lives. Glenn's background, Luke's arrest. New historicism says these aren't just trivia, they're part of the context that informs the art. How did their lived reality influence the themes, the style?
It connects the sometimes surreal art back to tangible reality.
And the specific places mentioned, Al's Bar, Mondo Video, Lancaster, Austin. Knowing the significance of those places at that time can add another layer of understanding.
Okay, how about post-colonial criticism? Seems like a stretch to me.
Well, you might not find direct references to literal colonialism, but the lens can still be useful for looking at power dynamics, representation, and the idea of otherness.
How are marginalized voices treated? Or are they absent?
That's the kind of question it asks. And remember that line, truly the subaltern cannot speak, found in their writings about fans.
Oh, right. That really makes you think about who gets to speak, who gets heard within their world, and maybe commenting on the wider world, too.
And even the aliens or interdimensional stuff. While it's sci-fi or fantasy, you could analyze it through a post-colonial lens. Who are these others? What's the power dynamic in these encounters? Are there echoes of how dominant cultures interact with perceived others? It's an interpretive possibility.
Interesting. Okay, feminist criticism, focusing on women representation.
Yeah. We look at the female figures who do appear. The girl asking for money, the moms hitting kids, Janet Jackson, Bonnie. How are they portrayed? What roles do they play? Are they complex characters or stereotypes?
Are their perspectives central, or are we mostly seeing things through a male lens?
That's a key question. Does the work offer insight into female experiences, or does it sideline them? What does the overall body of work suggest about gender representation?
Even small bits, like that anecdote about the news anchor reportedly working as a prostitute. A feminist lens would analyze that for its potential commentary on gender, power, economics, exploitation.
Exactly. It looks for how gender operates within the text.
Which leads us nicely into gender and queer studies. This broadens the scope beyond just female representation, right?
Right. It looks at all representations of gender identity and sexuality, especially where things challenge traditional norms.
Like Luke mentioning Glenn cross-dressing and the Starcle skirt. That definitely invites a reading through this lens.
For sure. Does the art play with gender expression? Does it subvert traditional roles? Are there moments that challenge binary thinking about gender or sexuality?
It encourages you to look for those moments of fluidity or nonconformity.
It asks how gender and sexuality are constructed or deconstructed within their creative output.
Okay, last one on our list. Critical race theory. Examining issues of race and racism.
And here, we need to be quite careful and descriptive. The source material does contain things like the Ching Swan news anchor reference, and that description of a lower Chingcheng ghetto slum area of Korea.
Right, so applying CRT here means analyzing how these references function. Do they seem to rely on or perpetuate racial stereotypes?
That's the core question. Does the text reinforce biases, or does it offer any kind of critique, however subtle or perhaps unintentional? It's about examining the racial dynamics present in the text.
We're observing what's in the source material and using this lens to understand its potential implications regarding race and representation without, endorsing problematic elements ourselves.
Precisely. It's about analyzing the textual artifact within its context, using the tools of CRT.
Wow. Okay, so going through all of those, it just highlights how incredibly layered this stuff is. 5 Starcle men's output. It's just wide open to interpretation, isn't it?
Absolutely. And like we said at the start, the goal wasn't to find the single answer. That feels, well, beside the point with this material.
Yeah. It was more about showing how each critical lens can illuminate different facets, bring different things into focus.
And hopefully that gives everyone, including us, a richer, maybe stranger, but definitely deeper appreciation of what they were doing.
For me, I think seeing the psychoanalytic angle on the inner turmoil of the self-destruction themes, that felt quite powerful. And also the formalist look at just the sound and shape of the language, even the nonsensical bits.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the reader response angle is crucial here too. It really validates the listener's active role in trying to make some kind of sense of it all. Your experience matters.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to take away. After hearing about all these different perspectives, all these ways of looking, is there maybe one thread, however thin, that you feel might connect these really disparate, often bizarre elements in the 5 Starcle men universe?
Or maybe not. Maybe the lack of a single thread is the point.
Could be something to think about. Maybe go back to some of the lyrics or stories with 1 or 2 of these lenses in mind. See what you find.